Mary Danielson, you state in the booklet you believe that this fellow is dangerously radical, that he's blatantly anti-capitalist, pro-socialist. And his background reveals that at one time he was a Marxist. That is common knowledge, and he would talk about that himself. Not only did he protest the Vietnam War, he rejoiced with America's defeat in the Vietnam War. Now, he has moderated some, but again, as we've been talking about, he's probably a good old hardcore socialist at this time, and he probably moderated so he could get his foot into the church, which he has.
Yes, he absolutely has. And the interesting thing about him moderating is his communism, which I call it outright, Marxism, communism, does play a part in here, because communism says the rich have become wealthy by exploiting the poor. And not that this is never the case. You know, in some tyrannical corner of the world, it certainly can be true, but it's not always the case. The thing to remember is that socialist literature throughout history claims that this is unequivocally the case. Now, the Bible says to care for the widow and the fatherless, and on an individual basis, though, as his people. Now, what he does is he confuses collective responsibility and all the guilt that comes with that versus personal accountability to the Lord, which is the result of our salvation, as Mike alluded to. But today's version replaces our responsibility before God as believers with the government now as the one who redistributes money, and that they're not entitled to through bureaucratic programs that never work anyway. And Christians then, in the church, are free to give to the cause that we feel most important. The government now gives our money to the cause that they deem important, which will likely go against our convictions. So there are all kinds of problems here. I mean, what if, say you want to redistribute wealth and you tax people and all that, and we all get that. But now let's just, how far does this go? I have a house. You feel you have the right to have a house. Can you have my house? We redistribute everyone's everything? I mean, it's just a trap here. There's just an open-ended scenario here for socialist world, which will be under Antichrist, because he causes all, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave. Here we have an equal opportunity Antichrist to receive his mark and his identification. So the end game for this particular socialism could very well be Revelation 13, 16, and 17.
I would totally agree. Eric, I think you want to weigh into this.
I believe what's going on, this is another way to look at it. It's part of our natural inbred DNA. We want to help people. Not every person in the world wants to help the next guy. They become cold and they reject others and so on. But we really, at the core of us, we want to help people. We see somebody in need, we want to help them. This is nothing more than the same ideas that United Way and Red Cross and even FEMA would be built on. It's a natural human emotion to want to help. And when somebody wants to become a doctor or a policeman or a fireman or an aid worker, they want to help people. But we can't allow those around us to claim that that is the gospel. And that's exactly what these guys are doing. So much of what Mary just said is so good. I hope folks will get the podcast and go back and listen again, because what Mike and Mary have said already is worth listening to this program again and again for, because this stuff is something we're facing in almost every sphere of the church, because we have abdicated our responsibility that the gospel gives us to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, take care of those that are in disrepair. We have abdicated that to the government. God help us.
And folks, you can get a CD of any favorite program here. Just call my office anytime and we'll help you with that. Play one more real quick 30-second soundbite. This again outlines his agenda, which is again poverty, AIDS, global warming, Darfur.
The country is hungry for a politics of solutions and a politics of hope.
Wallis says he's against abortion, but argues the agenda of the religious right is too narrow and divisive.
So is yours a new movement or an old movement that's new again?
The evangelists were abolitionists. They led the battle against slavery. They were revivalists and reformers. They fought for women's suffrage. They fought for child labor law reform. I want to build the same kind of social movements today. That means global poverty. It means Darfur. It means HIV/AIDS. It means global warming.
Well, I think those of us represented here today, we want to go out into the world and preach the gospel and save souls. I mean, I'm an old line evangelical, okay? The religious left drives me absolutely crazy, but this is sort of the pope of the religious left here.
Yes, absolutely. Wallis also went into a race war rant at his Wild Goose Festival in June. This is a transformational festival with McLaren and Wallis. They have something called the Wild Goose Festival every year, And he said he said, race is America's original sin. Now, he talks about being divisive. Listen to this. Our country was founded on racism, and all Americans are racist, particularly conservatives. And he told the young people there that the only way to fix that is to embrace his immigration notions. He told a class of students that the older racist generation is afraid of our youth because they're so diverse, and this is what America is going to look like, and that those blocking immigration reform are afraid of losing their white majority, and that the owner of the Washington Redskins is a racist, and on and on. And he sounds more like a racist, if you ask me, and he sounds more shrill the older he gets, but he's involved in something called EIT, which is Evangelicals Immigration Table, which is fronted by George Soros, but somehow now it's sanctified by the Bible.